On July 27, 2023, Pakistani climber Mohammad Hasan fell on K2, the world's second highest and deadliest peak. He lay tangled in ropes near the bottleneck, gravely injured, and yet dozens of climbers walked past him. Some looked, some stepped over him, some filmed him, but almost no one stopped. Hours passed. Mohammad Hasan died right there alone, on his home mountain, surrounded by a crowd of international climbers. The footage shocked the world. Was he ignored? Was he beyond saving? Or was it something even darker? The outrage was immediate. How could a man lie dying while other climbers pushed for glory? Why didn't anyone help him down? Was it lack of oxygen or lack of compassion? In this video, we uncover the story behind Hassan's final hours, who he was, why he was climbing, and what really happened during one of the most controversial days in K2's recent history. Because this isn't just a story of tragedy, it's a story about ambition, equality, and the ethical line between summit and sacrifice. This is the story of Mohammad Hasan and why no one stopped on K2. Mohammad Hasan wasn't a tourist. He was from the small town of Hush, located at the edge of Pakistan's Baltoro Glacier, home to some of the world's highest peaks. He grew up among mountains, guiding trekkers and transporting gear with an innate strength born of altitude. From childhood, he learned rope work, rock formation, and glacier crossing skills passed down for generations among Baltoro guides. In his 30s, Mohammed started pursuing high-altitude climbing himself. He summited Broad Peak and Gasherbrum Roman II in winter before K2, gaining attention in Pakistan's growing climbing community. He wasn't signed by foreign sponsors. He didn't have a large social profile, but he climbed with steady purpose and humility. For him, K2 wasn't just the savage mountain. It was a sacred place, a proving ground where local mountaineers like him earned respect. In the winter 2021-22 season, Mohammed joined a Himalayan climbing company team. He was sharing ropes with foreign climbers, saw the mountain differently like home turf, demanding respect. He wasn't carrying camera kits or seeking headlines, but his presence on the route was symbolic of Baltoro, local walking route shaped by his ancestors. On July 27, he was climbing near Camp 4 when tragedy struck. Many called him a casualty of the climbing system stacked against local guides where he's often viewed as support. His death sparked pain across Pakistan. Local climbers remember him as grateful, hardworking, and courageous. International guides recognized him as a dependable climber, one they trusted in tough moments. No fame, no viral videos, just a life shaped by eyes, brow, and purpose. And on that day, when he fell and lay waiting, he lay in a place he knew all too well. In the winter of 2021-22, a global expedition converged on K2 southern slope. Pakistan-based operators organized climbers from Europe, Asia, and beyond to attempt the first successful winter summit by the Abruzzi Spur. The goal: make history. Team structure was layered. Foreign climbers hired Pakistani high-altitude guides like Mohammad Hasan and other local professionals to support fixed ropes, ferry gear, and assist on summit bids. Guides like Hassan were essential. They knew the glacier, the winds, and the nuances that outsiders often miss. Climatization began in January. Climbers rotated between base camp and camps 1 through 4. Temperatures dropped to minus 45 degrees C at night. Routes were treacherous, fissures hidden by snow, creaking seracs above the bottleneck, avalanche risk persistent. Still, progress was steady thanks to local knowledge and relentless effort. By late July, window conditions emerged. Summit rotations were planned. On July 26 and 27, teams moved toward Camp 4 7,600 m for a coordinated push. Mohammad Hasan climbed with care. He fixed rope sections above the bottleneck, helped other climbers, and carried extra gear. He believed he could summit, and this wasn't his first high-altitude season. Importantly, many climbers used borrowed gear and limited oxygen supplies. Operatives prioritized summit timing over rescue capacity. Local guides often carried additional weight to support others. It was a time crunch. Storms across the Karakoram made decisions brutal. Go now or wait months. Some teams abandoned higher camps, others continued. On July 27, as Hassan moved ahead to fix lines at Camp 4, he slipped, to fall into a rope tangle near vertical slope, frigid exposure. Meanwhile, summit hopefuls pressed past him. With oxygen low and the summit window closing, few looked down. But Hassan's fall set the tone for conflict. Local guide in peril ignored amid foreign climbers focused onward. This wasn't a tourist tragedy. It was the pressure point of modern winter K2 where teamwork, local expertise, and urgency collided. And so Mohammad Hasan was left. On the morning of July 27, 2022, climbers began the final push from Camp 4 tilde 7,600 m toward the summit. Mohammad Hasan was at work earlier fixing ropes at the bottleneck while clients followed. He took a path ahead of a group, line running through steep snow and ice. Visibility was poor. Temperatures were bitter. Wind gusts threatened exposure. Around mid-morning, someone above heard a gasp. Soon, a climber below heard a rope tautened with an unnatural friction. Hassan had slit entangled in rope. caught but seriously injured and dangling. He managed to stand briefly, but then lost grip again, stabilizer strapped, hands fumbling, and finally he collapsed, still tethered, his leg broken or pinned by rope, in a near vertical gorge zone. At least 20 climbers passed by him in the following hours. A few slowed, some looked up, some breathed deeply, some filmed, but the collapse zone was tight. Carrying him down would require rigging or descending with equipment that most climbers didn't have that moment, and their oxygen supplies were low. Pressure for summit was mounting. Several climbers attempted verbal encouragement. They asked him if he could walk. He whispered, "Help me." Some offered rope adjustments, but few took physical action. Within 2 hours, Hassan grew faint. His oxygen ran low. His body cooled, his strength drained. No evacuation tool, not one pole, no stretcher, only bottled anger and silent regret. By midday, he lay still, and the flow of climbers pushing upward continued. It wasn't until evening that climbers reported him at Camp 4. Local guides found him in rope tangle unmoving. Their heads drooped. He died without descending. His body remained unattended for hours. Rescue teams could not return due to darkness and falling temperatures. Only the next morning, after photographic verification, was his death confirmed. Mohammad Hasan didn't fall in solitude. He fell within a flow of climbers more focused on the summit than the man beneath their boots, and that is the moment that haunts mountaineering. When Mohammad Hasan fell, the immediate question echoed across climbing circles. Why did nobody stop to help? The tragic calculus of high-altitude climbing begins with the death zone, the Arab of 8,000 meters where each minute costs life. For many passing climbers, the focus was on survival, not on rescue. 1. Oxygen shortage and time pressure. Climbers had limited bottled oxygen. A rescue attempt might take hours' time many simply didn't have. With summit conditions fleeting, many felt that delaying their ascent could cost their own lives. 2. Logistics and terrain limitations. K2's bottleneck area is extremely technical. Rescuing him would involve setting up pulleys, securing anchors, and perhaps retreating along difficult routes. No specialized equipment was available at that moment. 3. Expedition versus local guide. As a local guide, Hassan was part of the support team. Many foreigners did not consider it their responsibility to stop and save him. They believed that others would take care of it. The hierarchical structure prevented collective action. 4. Risk culture and unwritten codes in high mountains. There is an implicit rule: rescue if you do not put your own life at risk. That principle was invoked by many when deciding not to descend. But in this case, many later acknowledged feeling bad for not having spent time and effort to save him. 5. Lack of group leadership. There was no decisive moment when someone said, "We're stopping." The collective impulse was to continue upward, driven by ambition, visibility, or wind conditions. 6. Cultural differences and disparate priorities. For Hassan, K2 was spiritual and familiar. For others, it was just another conquest. When he fell, his cultural values did not align with the immediate priorities of those who were consuming oxygen and sweating the ecstasy of the summit. What became evident, it was not just that they did not rescue him, it was that his fall exposed an ethical void in international circles, a disconnect between local guide and client, between assistant and leader, between climber and humanity. The pain transcends the technical cause. Many who passed by felt remorse, and some even questioned whether he had reached the summit, because by the time they reached the highest point, he had already fallen behind. And that collective silence, that walking without looking back at, is the moment that redefines ambition in high mountains. To understand why Mohammad Hasan was bypassed, we must examine the cultural fault lines at play. Local vs. International priorities. For Hassan, born in the Hush Valley, climbing isn't spectacle, but identity. He scaled mountains to earn respect in his community. For his foreign teammates, K2 represented an elite challenge achieved in stories, photos, social media. When Hassan fell, local climbers felt immediate grief. Foreign climbers felt pressure to summit, both from guides and the expectations of the route window. Ethical norms in high-altitude culture, a common climber's ethos: you help only when it's safe for you. In K2's death zone, many honestly believed rescue would be suicidal. That ethos, even if practical, clashes with communal values of sacrifice and support common in Hassan's cultural context. Communication gaps, language barriers, hierarchy, and unclear role definitions left many climbers uncertain of responsibility. If Hassan's safety depended on a group decision, none emerged. Witness without action. The footage of climbers walking past a dying man triggered collective shame. Some locals said it was inconceivable they would have done everything to save him. Others reflected they were simply foreign visitors unaware of the weight of inaction. The moral dilemma of summit fever, the obsession to reach the top despite risk can cloud judgment. K2's extreme environment compresses time and amplifies the effect. The climbing culture rewards risk and pushes silence over confrontation. New conversations in Pakistan. Guides now talk openly about save the guide protocols. International teams are testing joint ethical training before gear, before rope, before summit push. Ultimately, Hassan's death revealed more than human error. It exposed a moral crossroads where ambition eclipses empathy and where shared routes demand shared responsibility. When news spread that Mohammad Hasan died on K2 and that most climbers did not attempt to rescue him, the Pakistani mountaineering community felt both grief and outrage. In towns across Baltistan, guides gathered at base camp in hushed solidarity. They acknowledged a painful truth. Local mountaineers were often invisible once foreign clients reached for summits. National media coverage was swift. Pakistani outlets questioned why no one stopped, why a man raised among these mountains was left tethered and motionless while others walked past. Ali Sadpar's family issued solemn statements. They emphasized that Hassan had been climbing K2 not for fame or payment, but out of love for the mountains. They demanded acknowledgement and a shift in expedition's values. Some foreign climbers later expressed regret, saying that oxygen constraints and the pressure window clouded their judgment. Pakistan's mountaineering ministry responded by mandating ethical aid training for all guided expeditions. Popular climbing companies introduced new protocols. If a local guide is injured, we pause, the policy read. Safety officers must now monitor guide welfare alongside client progress. Training sessions in Skardu began to revolve around the principle, these are our people. We owe them rescue priority. Local climbing schools introduced Maine's rule always assist local Sherpa before summit push. Outside Pakistan, Hassan's story prompted global reflection. High-altitude forums debated inequalities between local guides, often underpaid and unacknowledged, and foreign clients. Some veteran climbers described the incident as a turning point for expedition ethics. Documentaries are now in production about Hassan's life, not as a footnote to foreign summits, but as a central figure of integrity and sacrifice. His death also reshaped social media culture. Photographers pulled back from filming vulnerable climbers. Hashtags like #StopAndHelp, #GuideFirst, and #HonorLocal Lives trended across mountaineering newsfeeds. Communities initiated annual memorial climbs rather than summits. Participants gather below the bottleneck in Hassan's honor. They chant "Climb with compassion." Mohammad Hassan's final day did not break the mountain, but it cracked open a conversation about whose lives matter in the shadow of ambition. His legacy is no longer just a name. It's a call to rearrange culture, not summit first, humanity first. Mohammad Hassan's story is not about a fall. It's about a system that lets people fall silently, invisibly, and continues walking. In those last moments, on a frozen ledge beneath the bottleneck, Hassan didn't just need help. He needed to be seen, not as a rope fixer, not as a name on a manifest, but as a fellow climber equal, valued human. When climbers passed him, they didn't just step over a body. They stepped past a question. What are we climbing for? If a summit demands you leave someone behind, is it still worth reaching? K2 remains undefeated in its power, but so too does our choice to respond. We cannot rewind the ropes for return to that ledge, but we can remember what it asked of us. In honoring Mohammad Hassan, we challenge every climber, every team, every viewer to climb differently, to carry more than gear, to carry responsibility. Because when the ice cracks and the wind howls, the summit is not your legacy, your actions are. So next time, don't walk past.